In 1999, 2 years before September 11, 2001, a professor of geopolitical studies at a mid-sized university in Ohio published a 34-page academic paper. The paper described in precise detail a coordinated attack on two landmark buildings in Lower Manhattan. It named the method. It named the approximate date. It described the geopolitical motivation. And it predicted, with a level of accuracy that no intelligence agency publicly claimed before the fact, what would happen next. The paper was published in a quarterly academic journal with a circulation of approximately 800 subscribers. 6 weeks after publication, it was withdrawn. The journal cited editorial concerns. The professor's university page was removed. And on September 12, 2001, the day after the attacks, Dr. James Mercer disappeared. Dr. James Mercer joined the faculty of Whitfield University in Columbus, Ohio, in 1991. He taught geopolitical studies, a field concerned with the relationship between geography, power, and international conflict. It was not a high-profile department. It did not attract significant funding or media attention. It graduated approximately 30 students per year, most of whom went on to careers in government, consulting, or academia. By every account from colleagues who knew him, Mercer was a methodical and serious scholar. He published infrequently, 4 papers in 8 years, each of them careful, dense, and read primarily by specialists in his field. He did not seek attention. He did not make provocative claims. He was, in the language of academia, a safe pair of hands. He was also, by several accounts, unusually good at what he called reading the shape of things. A former colleague, who agreed to speak with us only on background, described it this way. James had a quality that I can only describe as pattern recognition, at a level that most of us don't operate at. He could look at a geopolitical situation, a set of historical precedents, a configuration of actors, a sequence of events, and see where it was going. Not always, but more often than felt comfortable. The colleague paused. Then she said, the paper wasn't the first time he'd been right about something that hadn't happened yet. It was just the first time he'd put it in writing. The paper was titled Asymmetric Escalation and the Symbolic Architecture of Western Economic Power, a Predictive Framework. It was submitted to the Journal of Geopolitical Risk Analysis in March of 1999. It was accepted after peer review in June. It was published in the journal's autumn edition, September of 1999. The paper opened with a theoretical framework, an argument about the relationship between symbolic targets and strategic messaging in asymmetric conflict. It argued that non-state actors operating under specific ideological conditions would, under a predictable set of circumstances, target infrastructure that was not primarily military, but primarily symbolic, buildings that represented in the global imagination the economic and cultural dominance of the West. It then moved from theory to application. In the application section, Mercer identified what he called the highest probability target cluster in the continental United States. He described 2 structures in Lower Manhattan. He described them by their function, their symbolic weight, and their structural vulnerability. He did not name them. But the description was precise enough that anyone reading the paper in September of 1999 and looking at the Lower Manhattan skyline would have known exactly which buildings he meant. He then provided a time frame, not a specific date, a window. He described the conditions that would need to be in place for an attack to occur and estimated, based on his analysis of organizational capacity, logistical requirements, and geopolitical pressure, that the window would open within 2 to 3 years of the paper's publication. 2 years later, on September 11, 2001, everything he described happened. 6 weeks after the paper was published, the Journal of Geopolitical Risk Analysis issued a retraction notice. The notice was brief. It cited editorial concerns and stated that the paper did not meet the journal's standards for methodological transparency. It offered no specific explanation of which methodological standards had not been met or how the peer review process had failed to identify this before publication. We contacted the journal for this story. The journal no longer exists. It ceased publication in 2004. Its archives, which were digitized in 2009, do not contain any record of the Mercer paper. The retraction notice is also absent. We found a reference to both the paper and the retraction in the footnotes of an unrelated academic article published in 2001, which is how we were able to confirm the basic timeline. We located one physical copy of the journal's autumn 1999 edition. It is held by a retired librarian in Vermont who has maintained a personal collection of academic journals since the 1970s. She allowed us to examine it. The paper is there, all 34 pages, including the application section. She told us she had never read it until we asked her to. After she read it, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How did no one do anything about this?" We didn't have an answer. Whitfield University removed Dr. Mercer's faculty page from its website in October of 2001, approximately 1 month after the attacks. The university's official position, when we contacted their communications office, was that Dr. Mercer had resigned his position in September of 2001, and that the university had no further information about his whereabouts. We asked when in September he had resigned. We were told the university did not have that information readily available. We asked whether his resignation had preceded or followed the September 11th attacks. We were told that question would need to be directed to the university's legal department. We directed it to the university's legal department. We received an automated acknowledgement. We have not received a response. We did speak with 3 former colleagues of Mercer's at Whitfield, all of whom had since moved to other institutions. All 3 described the removal of his page and the university's handling of his departure as abrupt and unexplained. One of them told us that when she asked the department chair about it at the time, she was told simply, "James has left." "That's all I can tell you." She pushed back. The department chair said, "Please don't ask me again." She didn't. Thomas was a graduate student in Mercer's seminar during the spring 1999 semester, the same semester Mercer was preparing the paper for submission. He agreed to speak with us. He asked us not to use his last name. He works in finance now in a city he preferred we not identify. He told us that the paper had circulated informally among Mercer's graduate students before publication, that Mercer had shared a draft and asked for feedback, which was not unusual. What was unusual, Thomas said, was the way Mercer talked about it. He said, "Most academics talk about their work as analysis, as interpretation. James talked about this paper differently. He talked about it like he was describing something he had witnessed, like he was writing it down because he needed someone else to have a record of it." We asked Thomas if he had ever asked Mercer directly what he meant by that. Thomas said he had. Once, he said Mercer's answer was, "I've been looking at this for a long time, and I think the shape of it is clear enough that someone needs to say it out loud, even if saying it out loud has consequences." Thomas remembered that phrase specifically. Even if saying it out loud has consequences. We asked him what he thought Mercer meant. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "At the time, I thought he meant academic consequences, criticism, controversy. I thought he was worried about his reputation." He paused. "I don't think that anymore." In August of 2001, approximately 1 month before the attacks, 2 men visited Dr. Mercer's office at Whitfield University. They identified themselves to the department's administrative assistant as federal agents. She described them to us as wearing suits, presenting credentials she did not look at closely, and being, in her word, polite. The meeting lasted approximately 40 minutes. When it ended, the two men left without speaking to anyone else in the department. Mercer returned to his office. He closed the door. He remained there for the rest of the afternoon. The administrative assistant told us. He looked different when they left. I don't know how to describe it exactly. He looked like someone who had just been told something they already knew. Not surprised, just settled, like something had been confirmed. We asked her if Mercer said anything about the visit afterward. She said, "He came out at the end of the day to get his coat, and I asked him if everything was all right, and he said yes, and then he said something I didn't understand at the time." She paused. He said, "Some things are going to happen that I can't stop, but at least someone knows I saw it coming." She told us she had thought about that sentence almost every day since September 12th, 2001. In 2000, Mercer submitted a manuscript to an academic press. The manuscript was a book, a full-length expansion of the theoretical framework he had developed in the 1999 paper. It was accepted for publication. The editorial correspondence, which we obtained through a contact at the press, shows that the manuscript was delivered in full in January of 2001. The delivered manuscript contained 12 chapters. The book was published in March of 2001, 6 months before the attacks. It contained 11 chapters. The editorial correspondence does not document any discussion of removing a chapter. There is no record of Mercer requesting the deletion. There is no note from the editor explaining the omission. The table of contents in the delivered manuscript, which our contact photographed, lists the 12 chapters. The 12th chapter is titled, "What Comes Next?" We do not have the text of that chapter. Nobody we spoke with has read it. We contacted the press and asked about the missing chapter. We were told there was no missing chapter, that the book as published was the book as submitted. We sent them a photograph of the table of contents from the original manuscript. They did not respond. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Dr. James Mercer did not appear for his scheduled class. This was noted by students who waited for approximately 20 minutes before leaving. A message was left with the department office. The department, understandably, had other things on its mind that morning. That afternoon, Mercer's neighbor, a retired teacher who lived in the apartment below his, saw him in the hallway. She told us he was carrying a travel bag. He was wearing a coat despite the warm weather. She asked him if he was going somewhere. He said he had some things to take care of. She asked if he had seen the news. He said, "Yes, I've seen it." She said he didn't look surprised. He said goodbye. He took the elevator. She heard the lobby door close. That was the last confirmed sighting of Dr. James Mercer. On September 12th, a colleague attempted to reach him by phone. The number had been disconnected. Another colleague went to his apartment. The building manager confirmed that Mercer had vacated the unit, leaving behind his furniture, his books, and most of his personal belongings. The university was notified. A missing persons report was eventually filed. It remains open. Here is what we can confirm. A paper was published in 1999 that described with significant accuracy the nature and approximate timing of the September 11th attacks. That paper was retracted 6 weeks after publication without clear explanation. The professor who wrote it disappeared on September 12, 2001. His university removed his records. The journal that published his work no longer exists. The book he published 6 months before the attacks is missing a chapter titled "What Comes Next?" 2 federal agents visited him 1 month before the attacks. His last words to a colleague suggested he knew something was going to happen that he couldn't stop. Here is what we don't know. How he knew. Whether his disappearance was voluntary. Whether he is still alive. What the missing chapter said. And why, 25 years later, no one in any official capacity has ever publicly acknowledged that a professor in Ohio predicted September 11th 2 years before it happened, and then vanished the morning after. We want to be precise about what we are and are not saying. We are not saying Dr. Mercer had advance knowledge of a conspiracy. We are not saying he was silenced. We are not saying his disappearance was connected to his paper in any way that we can prove. We are saying a man published something. It came true. He disappeared. And 25 years later, the questions that his case raises have never been answered. Some warnings are ignored, others are erased, and the people who give them, sometimes, simply disappear. If you know something about Dr. James Mercer, you know where to find us. Subscribe, share this, and leave a comment. Because the question isn't just what happened to him. The question is, if he saw it coming, who else has?